Coming up, President Park Geun-hye talks to U.S. President Barack Obama and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe over the phone about North Korea. They see eye to eye on what must be done in response to the regime's latest set of provocations. The North Korean rocket shows no upgrade from the one launched almost half a decade ago, and it's questionable the regime has the technology to retrieve it. That's the latest analysis from Seoul's defense ministry. It's a long holiday for most in Korea, but not all. It's an especially demanding time for those working in the service sector and drivers behind the wheel braving the Lunar New Year traffic. Great to have you with us at this hour. I'm Daniel Che, here to provide you with the latest. Our top story, the leaders of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan agree United Nations sanctions alone aren't enough to punish North Korea for its latest provocations. All three feel the strongest measure ever must be imposed on the reclusive state. Our Song Ji-sun starts us off.
President Park Geun-hye spoke with the leaders of the United States and Japan by phone on Tuesday morning, where they exchanged views on North Korea's nuclear test last month and Sunday's rocket launch. The three leaders had also spoken the day after the North's fourth nuclear test on January 6. President Park stressed that North Korea cannot succeed in simultaneously advancing its nuclear program and its economic development, and that Pyongyang's test of ballistic missile technology cannot be accepted, as it is a direct challenge to global peace and stability. President Obama said North Korea's launch is a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions and a direct threat to the security of the United States and its allies. Washington also reaffirmed that the U.S. stands firm in abiding by its mutual defense treaty with South Korea. In response, President Park expressed her appreciation for Washington's commitment to its allies and affirmed that maintaining a deterrent is the best way to counter the North's nuclear programs. Soon after speaking with President Obama, President Park spoke with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The two leaders reaffirmed their common goal of seeking the strongest and most effective UN resolution on North Korea, so the North pays price for its fourth nuclear test and the latest rocket launch. President Park stressed the need for separate bilateral and multilateral sanctions on North Korea, in addition to UN Security Council resolution that's already in the works, with Abe responding that Tokyo is currently in the process of crafting its own set of sanctions on Pyongyang. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The South Korean government is seeking stronger cooperation from the international community in dealing with North's latest aggression. Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se has left for the U.S. and Germany to speak with UN Chief Ban Ki-moon and other officials. For details, let's turn to Kwon So-hwa.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se expressed his hope for stronger sanctions on North Korea than in the past, before embarking on a trip to the United Nations headquarters in New York on Tuesday. That'll include a meeting with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, and Yoon is expected to ask for his cooperation in bringing about the swift adoption of new sanctions on Pyongyang. Yoon also vowed to push for greater support from the UN Security Council, whose 15 member states all agreed on the need for new measures against Pyongyang's latest missile launch.
The UN Security Council released a strong statement. Based on that momentum, I will bolster efforts with UN members and key allies.
And those efforts will include pushing China, North Korea's closest ally, to change its lukewarm stance toward tougher sanctions.
China and Russia were considerably cooperative in issuing Sunday's statement. Various separate discussions with China are also in progress in Seoul, Beijing, and at the UN.
Minister Yoon will continue his diplomatic efforts in Germany, where he will undertake a 3-day trip beginning Thursday to attend the annual Munich Security Conference. North Korea will be on the agenda there too, with Yoon slated to give a speech on South Korea's approach to Pyongyang. He is also expected to hold several other meetings on the issue, including with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, Germany's foreign minister, and maybe with his Russian counterpart too. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
And following North Korea's rocket launch, Seoul is preparing for talks with Washington to deploy an American missile defense system to Korea, a move once considered highly unlikely and even controversial. Connie Kim has the latest.
The United States hopes to deploy its Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD system, to the Korean Peninsula as soon as possible.
We'd like to see this move as quickly as possible, but we're beginning the consultations now in the coming days with the South Koreans, and we expect that this will move in an expeditious fashion.
The official's remarks come as South Korea and the United States agreed to discuss the matter on Sunday, the same day North Korea launched its long-range rocket. Citing a U.S. official, CNN reported that Washington wanted to deploy THAAD as early as next week, adding to speculation the system could be on South Korean soil soon. On Monday, U.S. President Barack Obama said for the first time that Washington and Seoul were in talks over boosting missile defense capabilities to prevent any possibility that North Korea could hit U.S. facilities or populations. The White House reaffirmed the THAAD system is intended to protect South Korea.
As a result of this launch, the United States has begun formal consultations with our allies in South Korea about moving equipment and technology that could support a THAAD system into South Korea to protect our allies there.
The White House added a THAAD would only be used to counter threats from Pyongyang, a statement echoed by the Pentagon.
If the THAAD system were deployed to the Korean Peninsula, it would be focused solely on North Korea and contribute to a layered missile defense.
China is deeply opposed to the deployment, as THAAD's radar has a radius of some 2,000 kilometers, meaning it could cover half of mainland China when deployed in Pyeongtaek, one of the candidate locations of the THAAD system. China's foreign ministry says the deployment of such a powerful piece of military hardware to the peninsula would detract from efforts to maintain peace and security in the region. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea's defense ministry has released its interim report on the capabilities of the rocket launch by North Korea on Sunday. Kim Hyun-bin shares with us the findings.
South Korea's defense ministry on Tuesday released its technical analysis of North Korea's recent rocket launch. The report, compiled by the Agency for Defense Development, says the Kwangmyongsong-4 satellite is in orbit and that the rocket's 3 stages separated successfully. The ministry added that it is trying to determine if the satellite is working properly, but said that no signals have been detected so far. U.S. officials with a similar analysis have been quoted by various media outlets, saying the satellite North Korea fired into space is, quote, tumbling in orbit and incapable of functioning in any useful way. Seoul's defense ministry says the rocket launched on Sunday is similar to that Una-3 that was launched in December of 2012.
North Korea's recent long-distance missile launch is similar to the previous missile launch in 2012.
They compared the rocket's trajectory and the altitude at which the satellites entered orbit, which were the same for both. They also examined the time it took both rockets to put the satellite into orbit, which differed by just 17 seconds. The Una-3 had a maximum range of 10,000 kilometers, and the ministry says the range of the rocket launched Sunday is better by about 2,000 kilometers. The ministry also said that although North Korea has developed its intercontinental ballistic missile technology with this latest launch, it has not yet perfected the technology needed to bring a launched missile back through the atmosphere. South Korea was the first to detect the rocket just 50 seconds after it was fired, but the rocket disappeared from radar 6 minutes after the launch, which was also shortly after the rocket shed the fairing that encases the satellite.
Seoul and Washington are conducting a joint investigation into the matter, including an analysis of the debris from the rocket's first stage. The ministry says it will be some time before it has any definitive results. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
In the wake of the North's rocket launch, South Korean lawmakers have found a renewed focus on national security. A counterterrorism bill that has been sitting in Parliament for months is now in the spotlight. To tell us more, here's Lee Min-young.
South Korea's rival political parties were quick to condemn North Korea's rocket launch. On the issue of deploying a U.S. missile defense system known as THAAD to South Korea, the ruling Saenuri party said it was high time the country had an extra layer of protection from North Korea's missile threats.
I strongly demand that we come up with firm countermeasures against North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. It's a life and death matter for people here as well.
South Korea's main opposition party suggested the regime's excessive focus on nuclear weapons and rockets could end up backfiring on it.
North Korea should understand that its obsession with the nuclear development will lead to the regime's collapse.
The parties have been monitoring recent developments on the Korean peninsula as tension again threatens to bubble over. A day after the North launched its rocket, a North Korean patrol boat crossed the northern limit line, the maritime border in the West Sea that separates the Koreas. The boat retreated after the South Korean Navy fired warning shots. The development have also refocused attention on a stalled bill at the National Assembly. The rival parties have yet to fully agree on passing an anti-terrorism bill aimed at protecting the lives of South Koreans and improving human rights in North Korea. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
Well, we are celebrating the Lunar New Year holidays here in South Korea, so let's get a check on the traffic situation. Congestion on the roads has eased up a bit as the long holiday draws to an end. The Korea Expressway Corporation says as of midnight Wednesday, the return trip from Busan to Seoul will take a little less than 4.5 hours. From Daejeon to Seoul, 2 hours. You'll be on the road for about 3 hours and 20 minutes if you're on your way from Daegu. The KEC estimates that 4.3 million cars began the journey back to the capital region on Tuesday. Seoul-bound traffic is expected to continue until 2 or 3 a.m. Wednesday morning. While most people are able to enjoy the 5-day Lunar New Year holiday, many still have to work to keep the country running. Shin Se-min met some people for whom it's business as usual even during these national holidays.
An annual mass exodus is taking place in the country in light of the Lunar New Year holiday. It's also a time when highways are clogged and bus stations loaded with passengers, all making their journey home to spend a long-awaited moment with their family.
And here at Seoul Station, it's no exception. Some 2.8 million travelers will be getting on and off the trains to see their family members living in other parts of the country. But it wouldn't have been possible without those hard at work, even during the national holidays.
At the forefront are train conductors, working extended hours during the holiday period, along with the rail staff that assists countless number of travelers. They even provide directions to patrons waiting on the packed platforms.
I won't get the chance to see my family in my hometown this time, but helping others get to theirs and seeing them with gifts in both hands is rewarding.
And there are those who silently carry on with their duties as usual. City bus driver Lee Jae-won is one of them.
It's my job. Even if I don't get many days off to spend it with my family, it's all part of public service.
With a sense of responsibility and duty, public transportation operators in and out of the city are doing their best to accommodate the public. But it's not limited to transportation workers. Those in the leisure sectors are also sacrificing personal time with family for the benefit of the public.
This time, I chose to be more productive over the holiday as I have prioritized my work over spending time with my family.
While most of the public gets to take advantage of the rare, almost week-long holiday, there are those that are working hard and making sure everything runs smoothly so the rest of society can enjoy a happy and prosperous New Year. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, Japanese stocks plunged more than 5% and the yield on the benchmark government bond dropped into negative territory for the first time. It's the most dramatic consequence of the Bank of Japan's decision to introduce negative interest rates last month. Kwon Jang-ho files us this report.
Global investors might have been hoping for a quiet week, with China and many markets in Asia closed for the Lunar New Year. But after markets in Europe and US took a tumble on Monday, Japanese stocks followed suit, taking a turn for the worse on Tuesday. The Nikkei index dropped 5.4% for the biggest single-day drop since May 2013. The Topix index also fell by 5.5%. Tokyo's banks were the biggest losers, with Mitsubishi UFJ and Sumitomo Mitsui both down more than 8% at market close. The yen also hit a 15-month high against the US dollar during today's session. This affected export businesses, including Japan's auto industries, with Toyota, Honda, Nissan all dropping around 6% or more. There was also a historic turn with Japan's 10-year government bond yields turning negative for the first time. These movements came in spite of the Bank of Japan introducing negative interest rates less than 2 weeks ago to try and reinvigorate the economy. Global markets are now waiting for Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen to give word on Wednesday about future US rate hikes. Elsewhere in Asia, Australia's S&P index plunged nearly 3%, while markets in the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand and New Zealand were also down. China's markets are closed all week for the Lunar New Year holiday. Hong Kong and South Korea will reopen on Thursday. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Some tragic news coming from Germany. 2 trains collided head-on there on Tuesday, killing 9 people and injuring more than 100, some seriously. Investigators are trying to determine what caused the collision, which occurred on a single track. Police indicated the site of the collision made it difficult to retrieve the injured. German Transport Minister Alexander Dobrindt was at the scene and said it's unclear whether a technical failure or human error caused the crash. And we've come to the end of our newscast. As always, thank you for watching.